The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
1-877-528-8255 is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is on the shores of Lake Ontario between the cities of Toronto and Niagara Falls, smack dab in the middle of the Great Lakes Triangle. Our toll-free number, once again, is 1-877-528-8255. My email address is xzone@talkstarradio.com. On MSN Messenger, talkstarradio@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradio.com and www.xzonetv.com. My guest this hour is Ann Druffel. And we're going to be talking about UFOs. Our first guest tonight was Stanton Friedman, the father of modern-day ufology. And we're working our way up to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of July, which are the Roswell anniversary dates. After all, the crash of the UFO in Roswell occurred on July the 4th, 1947. So Anne is also involved in ufology. She began investigating UFO reports in Southern California in about April 1957 with the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, known as NICAP, which was directed by the UFO research pioneer Major Donald E. Kehoe, who was formerly of the United States Marine Corps, and became acquainted with Dr. James E. McDonald through his contacts with the Los Angeles NICAP subcommittee from 1966 to 1971, following the NICAP's demise in 1970, and joined the Mutual UFO Network and then the newly formed Center for UFO Studies. Now, Anne has researched, now listen to this, X-Zone Nation, she has researched over 2,000 Los Angeles Basin reports, including alleged landings, UFO photo cases, close encounters with physical effects on witnesses and terrain, alleged abduction reports, and other UFO-related phenomena. She is a prolific writer. She has contributed over 180 articles on various aspects of the UFO subject to numerous UFO journals and international publications. Frequently speaking on UFOs before civic and educational groups, Ann Druffel is noted for her lively slide presentations and Q&A sessions, and has presented many papers at UFO symposia, conferences, and gatherings. Since 1965, she has been a spokesperson on various aspects of UFOs for TV, radio, and press, as well as consultant, researcher, film writer on numerous UFO documentaries. She wrote the classic book, Tujunga Canyon Contacts, with parapsychologist D. Scott Rogo, and contributed to the other major literary works such as Ron's Story, UFO Encyclopedia, and Rongo's anthology, UFO Abductions. Her most recent UFO-related book is How to Defend Yourself Against Alien Abductions, published by Three Rivers Press and Random House in August 1998. Her most recent book is Firestorm, Dr. James E. McDonald's Fight for UFO Science, which was published by Wildflower Press in July of 2003. When I come back from this 2-minute commercial break, Ann Druffel is going to be joining me, and we're going to be discussing how to properly investigate UFO reports. After all, she has researched over 2,000 Los Angeles Basin reports. This lady knows what she's talking about. her credibility is one of expert, and she has an excellent reputation when it comes to the UFO community. Ann Druffel is my special guest. Her website is andruffel.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as we continue right here.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Welcome back, everyone. Ann Druffel is our very special guest. Her website is www.andruffel.com. And Ann, welcome back to the X-Zone. How are you, my dear, and how are things in beautiful California tonight?
Oh, they're really nice and sunny, beautiful.
Ann, you've investigated or researched over 2,000 UFO-related events in your career as a ufologist. How did you get involved in ufology? What was the event that christened you into this quest that you've been on for so many years?
Well, I've described this several times, but it was something that I saw in 1945 when I was a schoolgirl from Long Beach, California. At the time, the World War II was still going on in Japan, and I was coming home in the bus, and I saw this thing in the northeast sky. I had been interested in astronomy since the age of 9, and I was very, very puzzled about it. This thing, it was a cohesive yellow-white light in broad daylight in the sky, 2 to 3 times the size of a daytime Venus, but cohesive and very, very bright and definite. And I watched this thing. I walked home. I watched it an hour and a half.
Wow.
Move slowly from the north-northeast to the north-northwest. I couldn't figure out what it was. It was very, very high. My mother saw it with me. She didn't know what it was. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And then about an hour and a half after I had been watching the thing move very, very slowly, it gave out what I call parts of itself, which took varying paths away from the main object. And there were 15 or 20 of these tiny little things that sparkled in the sunshine, in the west.
Mm-hmm.
By that time, it was 4:30, 5 o'clock, around that time. And this was in late June or July of 1945, before the war ended. And when the thing gave off these little particles, I tried to get my mother back to see these things coming out of the main object with me, because it was so awesome and frightening. It was frightening to watch this thing. And my mother wouldn't come out. She was cooking dinner, more important. And so I couldn't go out again to watch the thing anymore, because it was just so frightening and so awesome. And then about 2 weeks later, the bomb was exploded over Hiroshima, and so years later, I figured that the thing I saw was at about the same time the first experimental atom bomb had been exploded, in New Mexico, in Frenchman's Flat. But we didn't know about that, you see.
Right.
But about the same time, and I developed this hypothesis that perhaps this thing was what you call a carrier craft with many little scout ships or surveillance, smaller ships, come to see what was happening on the Earth, because we had entered the atomic age.
And during your research that you've done over the years, was there an increase in UFO activity at the time of the bombings in Japan of Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Well, you see, we didn't know anything about flying saucers. We didn't even know about the things that were being seen in the European theater or in the Japanese theater. What they called
Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters,
right,
and other names they gave. They did not have the detail that later the UFOs took on, physical details of apparently a craft. Mm-hmm. Most of these were just lights that traveled around the military planes and things. So we didn't know anything about that. They kept that from the public, and the stuff about the Foo Fighters came out much later. So it might have been that this thing might have been a collection of what you call Foo Fighters, which had
mm-hmm. come
from the European theater, which had closed down because we had found peace there, and was moving, over and to where the atomic bomb had been exploded, that the public didn't know about. The first experimental atomic bomb.
Did you have any idea, the day that you watched this UFO when you were a little girl, that what you were watching was going to have such an impact on your life?
No, I had no idea. When the information about the bombing of Hiroshima came out in the papers about 2 weeks later, mm-hmm. I tried to understand it. It was on the first page, and I couldn't understand all the technicality, that was involved in atomic bombs. But I'm sorry, I forgot to.
No, I was just asking that. Here you are, a little girl. You're watching this object in the sky for over an hour. Your mother sees it. You said it frightened you.
Yes.
And I was just wondering. I had asked you if you thought at that time that what you were looking at would play such a part in your life.
I had no idea at the time. But when we read about the explosion
mm-hmm.
Of the atom bomb over Hiroshima, the same kind of fright, fear, and
yeah.
awe struck me, you see, while reading about the atom bomb that I had felt while watching this thing in the sky, and I couldn't understand that, you see. they were both great mysteries. I didn't know if they were connected or not, of course. But then when Major Kehoe began to write his books and formed NICAP, or took the directorship of NICAP, by that time I was working, and I joined. I started reading his books first in 1950, you see, and by the time he became director of NICAP in 1957, I joined right up, one of the first members that joined him.
What kind of training did you get with NICAP when it came to investigating or researching UFO and UFO-related phenomenon?
Well, you see, I didn't have any training directly from NICAP because they took technologically and scientifically oriented people as their investigators.
I see.
And by that time, I had become a professional social caseworker, and I had the skills. They were skills of interviewing, of objective value judging, of facts given to you, and also the art of writing accurate records. And so these three skills fit right in with the investigation of UFOs.
They certainly do. Do you see a big difference between the way that UFOs are researched and investigated today compared to how they were when ufology was still young?
Yes, I do. Of course, there are many excellent scientific and scientifically oriented investigators in the field. But there are also a lot of people who call themselves researchers and investigators, and they will receive cases from the public of what the public, this public person saw in the sky, and it's presented almost immediately on the Internet now as a report. And a lot of these so-called reports are not investigated at all, you see, at least to any depth, so that they know that it's a truly unidentified object which you can call a UFO. NICAP in 1965, we formed a public reporting system and filter center called Skynet, you see.
Yes.
And there were up to 100 people around the Southern California area on a map, and we knew all where they lived and when they were available. And I was getting reports from the public, from the Griffith Observatory, and from one or two of the major police stations in the area, and from 2 or 3 of the major newspapers. All of these wonderful sources that were receiving reports from the public. The public didn't know where to call when they saw something. They'd say, "I see a UFO," So they were referred to me at Skynet. I was the project coordinator, and then I would figure out where this person was and call the Skynet member closest to where they were seeing the object, in the hopes that the Skynet member could go out and also see it and identify it. And this way, we were able to identify about 80% of the reports that came into us as UFOs, because we had, a skilled person close by looking at the same thing and figuring out what it was.
Now, when you say UFON, are you talking about extraterrestrial entity, or is it just something that was unidentified?
Well, when I say UFO, my mind tells me unidentified flying object. But my own favorite hypothesis is that the physical craft, the unidentifiable physical craft that fly through our atmosphere and chase our military planes and sometimes land and come very close to witnesses, that they are very possibly extraterrestrial in nature.
Do you think that these ETs pose a threat to this planet?
I have never felt from any of the 2,000 and more reports that I've investigated that there was any threat, no.
Ann Druffel is our special guest. Ann, please stand by. Great having you on the show again. Ann Druffel's website is www.anndruffel.com. That's ANNDRUFFEL.com. And Ann and I will be back on the other side of this news break as the X Zone continues on Talkstar. In the final hour of tonight's show, yes, it is Tuesday night, and yes, that does mean X-1. We are going back to 1957, episode number 83, entitled The Moon is Green. That's in the next hour here on the X Zone, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and our fine family of broadcast affiliates across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, 24 Asian countries, and across Europe. And Druffel is my special guest. We're talking about UFOs. And if you'd like to give us a call and ask Ann a question, our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That's toll-free at 1-877-528-8255. And how would you investigate a UFO sighting, and what would be the proper procedure for people who are just getting into the field today that they should follow when investigating or researching an alleged UFO landing?
Well, first of all, I believe that an investigator or a researcher has to be scientifically oriented.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, some type of technical, some sort of technical or interviewing ability that is beyond just a plain talking to people. The ability to judge what a person is saying as to whether or not it might be acceptable. It's a kind you need to have a personality that is friendly and kind and appears accepting of what they are saying. There can't be any confrontation with them, of course. Mm-hmm. Everybody would know that. But most important is the scientifically objective attitude that an investigator must have. They can't believe in their head, that UFOs exist, and everyone who sees something strange in the sky is seeing a UFO. You have to be aware of all of the dozens and dozens of things that have been mistaken in the past and are still being mistaken now as UFOs, because they are not known to the person who is seeing the thing and not recognizing what it is. So,
and this could include some very strange cloud formations. It could include anything from a weather balloon to an experimental type of craft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and in this area especially, and Southern California, you know what Southern California is like, but it might be other places around the world. They have what are called candle balloons. At least
yes.
they did years ago. They would fill a plastic bag, that had covered garments that had been dry cleaned. They would fill it with hot air, and then at the bottom they would arrange a little wooden circle and put candles on it, and then they would insert that, or they would insert the plastic bag over the candles, which were already lit, and this is the way the bag would fill with air, and then they would let it up into the air. And sometimes they were generally set off at night, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time. And these were mistaken time and time again, hundreds of times, by witnesses as UFOs. But we learned to identify them by the fact that they traveled with the wind,
mm-hmm.
or that they, the way they bounced in the air. Or through Skynet, of course, if you could get someone close enough to where the witness was seeing this strange thing in the sky, the witness could go out and identify it as a candle balloon, because they might be closer to the object than the original witness.
Interesting. What was one of your most profound investigations or research that you did as an investigator, Anne?
How would you choose? Of course, the Heflin photos, which are still being investigated, was one of the main photo cases that was taken on by NICAP in 1965, and I don't know if you're aware, or if your listeners are aware of the Heflin photos.
Well, why don't we tell them?
They were photographed by a highway engineer on the edge of Santa Ana, California.
Mm-hmm.
He was a highway maintenance engineer with the Santa Ana Traffic Department, and he had, of course, part of his job was to identify things along the highways that would impede traffic or make traffic difficult or dangerous. And so one day, August 3rd, 1965, he was traveling about 1.5 miles south of the freeway that goes through Santa Ana, and he saw this thing go over his truck. And of course, he had the camera right by his seat, because he had stopped to photograph it was a sign, a highway sign, which was being obscured by vegetation, so that the people traveling on this road could not read what the sign said. It was a warning about, a slow down or something like that. So he stopped to photograph that so that he could report it to his office.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time he stopped, a thing flew over from the south over his truck, and he was amazed because it was an unidentified physical aircraft. It was a sort of an unidentifiable physical aircraft of some kind. And so he snatched up the camera and took a picture,
mm-hmm.
and then it moved farther along. Oh yes, then it turned on its side, and he could see on the bottom that there was a ring of light going around the bottom, and he took a picture of that, and then it straightened again and went off and further into the distance, and he took a picture of that. And by that time, the third picture we later discovered showed smoke coming out of the craft, you see. And then the thing disappeared into the distance.
Now, smoke coming out of a
but
craft.
it left behind a ring of bluish-black smoke in the sky, which was very strange because it was cohesive. It did not, dissipate with the winds that were blowing. And so he went and took a fourth picture. He traveled up a mile in his truck, got out of the car, and took a picture of the smoke ring in the sky. And so those were the Heflin photos, and to this day they are still being studied avidly by scientists.
Isn't it very rare that a UFO expels smoke, Ann?
It's been known before that there are 2 or 3 other photos of from around the world where there's either a smoke ring around an object of basically the same shape as the Heflin craft, or it's apparent that such a craft has left a smoke ring in the sky, but these have not been investigated thoroughly, as far as I know, like the Heflin photos. And so they are considered now to be probably the most valuable set of UFO photos that have ever been taken.
And how about alien abductions? Have you investigated abduction cases? And if so, how did you investigate them?
Well, in 1973, the UFO field suddenly seemed to just flip and change. Mm-hmm. And instead of the objects being seen in the sky or photographed in the sky, we were getting numerous reports of from basically rational and witnesses that rational, productive, honest witnesses that they were being taken out of their beds at night and into what they perceived to be the interior of a UFO. And sometimes, they would see a light shining through their window, but there was never the physical craft that they saw themselves going toward. At least those cases are very, very rare. It was mostly just that suddenly they found themselves aboard what they perceived to be the interior of a UFO, with these strange little creatures harassing them and then examining them, and the cases just proliferated to such a degree that we were overwhelmed here with the so-called abduction cases instead of the regular cases that we were used to since 1957.
Do you have a hypothesis on why this happened?
At first, I accepted the abduction reports as possibly UFO entities coming from physical craft and taking witnesses aboard to harass and, sexually harass them. I accepted it because that was a general feeling in the field, because of the rationality and honesty of most of the witnesses, you see.
Right.
But then there was it began to be, we began to wonder why the great majority of these cases, about 99 and 99%, 9% of the cases in this area, were the person suddenly awoke in their bed, found the creatures standing near them, and then they were up into a so-called craft. We wondered why it would have to happen like that. And then the hypothesis that these things occurred in an altered state of consciousness emerged in the field, which to me sounded very, very good, very scientifically oriented. That it was that these events took place in an altered state of consciousness, because it was the witnesses themselves felt that they were fully awake, but there was never any physical proof of the object being physical. There was just the story you see, and the fact that the person woke up from a state, from a sleeping state, into another state that they perceive to be a true waking consciousness, but which could well be what we call an altered state of consciousness.
Now, would this be sleep paralysis?
No, it would be different from sleep paralysis. The particular altered state of consciousness, to my knowledge, has not yet been identified, but it's very close to the state of consciousness into which shamans, and indigenous peoples enter when they want to go into a spiritual dimension. And a lot of these shamans, they are caught in between the space-time continuum we live in and the spiritual dimension they're headed into a state of consciousness called the realm of the trickster, you see. And this is where information that they later find out is faulty is given to them. But some of them, think that it's from the spiritual dimension instead of from a state of consciousness in which faulty information is being given to them. I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So basically, they're going into having a spiritual encounter rather than an alien abduction encounter.
Oh, well, when I say spiritual, I mean a good.
Yes.
A good spiritual encounter. But the realm of the trickster, so to speak, or this state of consciousness in which faulty information can be given by a phenomenon that the Irish call them a fairy folk.
Yes.
The Muslims call them jinns. They're called by different names in every culture, major and minor, in the entire world, down through the millennia. So these encounters with strange interdimensional creatures, giving faulty information and harassment, generally sexual harassment.
And we've got to take a break. We'll be back on the other side with Ann Druffel. www.anndruffel.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
Ann Druffel's our very special guest this hour, www.anndruffel.com. And how many different alien visitors are we getting on this planet? Any idea?
Well, you see, to me, the physical UFOs that are seen in the sky and chased by jet planes, these might contain entities from extraterrestrial sources. But we, as far as I know, we don't know anything about them, except, to my mind, they are not friendly, they are not unfriendly. They are simply surveying our Earth to see what we're going to do with it, you know, whether we're going to blow it up or anything like that. Other researchers say that there are up to 70 different types of entities, but these are generally the researchers that believe that the so-called abductors are physical in themselves and are from the physical UFOs. This is a scenario that I do not accept. I have a separate phenomenon. I mean, a separate scenario that the so-called abductions, which occur in altered states, are a separate phenomenon from the UFO field itself. It's something that's happened to cultures around the world for millennia. They're basically all the same, except that they have the ability to shape-shift and take different shapes and wear different kinds of clothing according to the culture in which they appear, you see. And the harassment that they impose upon their victims differs according to the culture, what the culture can accept, you see.
I see.
I mean, like in Ireland, you know.
Leprechauns.
Well, no. You see, these creatures are both good and bad. They're an interdimensional type of creature, and they're both good and bad. And it's the bad type of this interdimensional type of creation that causes the so-called abductions. But of course, a leprechaun is basically a good fairy, like a brownie.
Oh, right.
But there are other types of so-called fairy folk that the Irish have reported for centuries that do a certain sexual harassment, but it's a milder type than what goes on in our country or in Muslim countries, you see.
And we have to say so long for now, but it's been a great hour having you with us here on the X Zone. Thanks very much for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and your expertise with us here on the X Zone.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Take care of yourself, Ann.
You too.
Bye-bye, dear. Ann Druffel, www.anndruffel.com, one of the most experienced UFO researchers and investigators that we've had here on the show, with over 2,000 cases to her credit. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break and the news at 6.5 minutes past with X-1. The Moon is Green from 1957. It is episode number 83. We'll be back on the other side as we continue live and around the world right here in the X Zone on Talkstar.